Well, hello world. Look at this. We're back. I had a great day yesterday at my photo shoot. Really beautiful house. Actually, a home I actually designed with the help of my colleague Andrew Carlos. So it was a fantastic shoot yesterday. I did not have any interviews yesterday because of that. It was a full day shoot, and we're lucky here to have Scott Magic here today. Connecting him up right now. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Ian, how you doing?
Good, good. Hey, could I ask you to rotate 90? Perfect. Sorry.
It's all good, all good.
So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today and joining on this Instagram live talk that I've started here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's good to see your face again. It's been a
Yeah,
few
I know.
days. Yeah.
Little secret to everybody. I usually have talks with everybody before these, and yesterday, Scott, talking with you was amazing, and I'm really excited for you to share everything with with this audience today that we had the chance to talk about. I mean, it may be a little bit shorter. We had a really long and engaging conversation, which was really awesome. So before we get started, I just want to remind you that I live next to the trolley. So occasionally you will hear some trolley noises. So don't let that discourage you. Everything is still going as planned.
Oh, and
um,
I apologize too if there's toddlers that somehow climb on me or scream at me. So sorry.
you're not using the old school teaching technique with a meter stick.
No, today's standards are iPads with headphones, but that
Okay.
only lasts for so long.
So let's get started here. Scott, you've done a lot in your lifetime, and it'd be great if we start talking about who you are and what brought you into architecture. I think that's a great starting point.
Sure, sure. So I think the more gray hair you get, the more you realize like life is just coincidences and chances. Um, I was fortunate to grow up in Chicago, which at that time had a lot of culture, and so we were exposed to all kinds of things from Ferris Bueller to an amazing music scene. To the Art Institute, and you realize whether directly or indirectly those things influence you. Um, so I hated the city when I was a teenager, and I had to get away. Um, so I chose someplace far, far away that no one else was going to. So I went to the University of Oregon as a business major. I had a scholarship. I was going to be a finance major. Um, and then the first class we had, we watched Animal House. And I realized, like, I did the math, and it was like, wow, I just paid, $700 to watch Animal House. This is a terrible use of money. So I had also really kind of fallen in love with design and had restored a barn as a kid. And so I took a course in architecture and, one of those like big survey courses. And the teacher grabbed me and said, "You need to do this." And my dad was terrified. He's like, "You're never going to make money in architecture. Stay with business. It's safer." And so I disagreed with him, and here I am today. I went into architecture and never looked back. And my mentor Bill was an amazing influence, and so he kind of just changed my course of life and trajectory. Never didn't know anything about architecture, didn't know anything about design or drafting. My drawings were crap. I felt sorry. But you know, you get better the more you do. Um, and then from there, I graduated with a bachelor's degree from the University of Oregon, and the September 11th happened, and the recession happened in 2001, the dot-com bust, and we were stuck in a similar situation right now, but not as bad, with nothing to do. So I went to Europe and realized that Europe was built with money, and if you want to do architecture uh, and trolleys, you need to have money. So um, I ended up moving down to San Diego. I'd wanted to meet a guy named Jonathan Siegel, who at that time had had built a few houses and small apartment buildings in Little Italy, and so I met him and met Sebastian and a few others, and I decided to move to San Diego without a job, and ended up working with Mark Steele. He took me on, this punk kid, and then kind of went from there forward. And I miss San Diego a bit. The sun's beautiful. The water's amazing, and the city's is quite easy to live in. And I miss all those people. But the one thing I ended up doing in San Diego was I got tired working as an intern, taking exams and trying to give meaning to some, bathroom elevation or some corporate office that they just wanted to put their brand color on the wall. It was like, whatever. And so I ended up volunteering, and every Friday I'd ride my bike from downtown San Diego to the Salk Institute. And for 4 hours, I'd just meet people and give tours of that building. And what kind of closed the circle for me was this was also a place where the guy who got me into architecture, Bill Kleinsesser, had worked on that building for Louis Kahn. So it was kind of a way to say thank you, but also just meet a bunch of people and meet architects and share in that experience of life in a really phenomenal setting. And what was cool is I got to meet scientists and politicians, and you realize that, no offense, architects talking architects, it's like whatever. But if you can talk to the public, if you can convince people that the Salk's concrete is not a prison, you've done something good for architecture. And I think that we don't have enough advocates selling, what we do to the general public, or oftentimes we kind of alienate the public with what we do or the words we use. And so that was really humbling. And I got tired of my job and started teaching at New School, where I met you, and ultimately met my wife a few months later and moved to Texas, where she was from. So anyway, that's kind of another story. But
it's really amazing how people have affected you in your life and have pushed you through your architecture. That's something we didn't touch on yesterday on the call, but that the idea of having a mentor is a big part of your life story.
it is. I think
That's it's a huge part of architecture. I think
it is. The sad thing is Bill passed away a few years ago. But they touch you. They kind of that spirit and their words still live with you in a way. The only way I could describe Bill was it was like going to school to see Mr. Rogers talk about his life through a slideshow, old slides, and was kind of the salt of the earth. He did everything he could to help you, but then he'd also put that fear of God in you as a dad would, that what you're doing is not good enough. and that the only building Louis Kahn ever truly thought he came close to making a perfect building was the Kimball Art Museum. The rest of them weren't good enough, which is mind-blowing if you think about that. So it's cool. But and the Salk has many incredible other stories that tie to what we're dealing with right now, with a virus that no one understood, a scientist who was funded by a nonprofit that a president had started, and a president who had polio. And even till this day, some people either think FDR is a saint or they think he's the devil. But it's it is what it is. It's built history, which is so cool. But the thing that I would say is that the people around you actually make your life, and the people you meet make your life, and you just have to embrace that and go with it and see where that takes you, because you never know.
Yeah, I mean, especially in architecture, I think teachers and people I've worked with, the people I currently work with, they have such an influence on my life of sharing knowledge. We can go to schools for as long as you'd like, and you can learn everything and be the top student in your class. But ultimately, once you get out into the field, it's a totally new ballpark. And to have a mentor, and to have somebody there in each point of your life to help push you into that next step, you need that, especially in architecture. You need that push to get into it. You need that push to advance yourself, and you need that push to gain more knowledge. And and I really appreciate you sharing that part of your story, because that's often a part that's kind of forgotten about, but plays such a strong part in our lives.
It is, and I think the thing that hit me when I was 18 and hearing a lecture about the Sea Ranch, a famous development north of San Francisco. Uh, you hear what these guys were doing, and you realize kind of how profound just what we draw and what we do is. Whether or not we ever meet the people who actually give a shit about our work is something else. But like, if you do something interesting, people are going to notice, good and bad. But
Hmm.
and if you do something that's kind of mediocre and kind of vanilla, like everybody else, it's like, well, okay, great, good job. You did what everyone else did. But it's the older you get, you realize like life is short, and you need to have fun. You need to be happy, and you need to do some cool shit. And that's
So talking about cool shit, let's talk about what you're doing now. You know, I You're doing a lot of cool shit right now. You're branching off, not only still working here in San Diego, but you're also doing a lot of amazing projects in Texas. So I'd love for you to share more about the work that you're doing right now.
well, sure. So the thing that's happened is I worked. The thing about Texas is made of Texans, and the first thing you don't say when you move to Texas is that I just moved here from California. That is like a fatal wound. You're dead. Just get back in your U-Haul and drive back. You just don't say that. So write that down if you're listening. Um, but the thing about Texas and my wife is that there's very different areas. There's very blue areas. There's very red areas. Very quickly outside of the city. And the first thing I told my wife was, I don't know if I'm a Texas kind of guy. I don't have a pickup truck. I don't have a gun, and I don't like the Dallas Cowboys.
Me too.
So yeah. Sorry for some of you out there. So, but I did have a crappy Volvo station wagon, and
Uh-oh. Hold up. Looks like looks
Oh,
like
can you
we're.
see me? Sorry, I
Oh,
lost you
there
for
we
a
go.
second. Anyway, so the thing about Texas, and I like to sort of compare this with my friends who do work in California, because people often don't realize why it takes so long to get a project built. And in California, it can be a long time to get something just through getting a building permit, like years, sometimes if you're lucky, 6 months. So the first year I moved here, and my former boss Michael Shu, who was I'm grateful for, um, I got 10 projects built in 1 year compared to one in San Diego. And so it just showed you, and there's pros and cons in that if you want to exercise ideas, maybe this is a good place to do it. And also at that time, like, people were doing interesting things here in Austin. There's a spirit here that I think people see when they visit for festivals or for travel, but people are willing to do creative things here that are unusual. It's not like it's sort of that moniker, keep Austin weird or keep Portland weird, but in reality, people are just open to interesting things and taking a chance, whether that's a business or a food concept or trying some crazy material or making a space. That they're just willing to express themselves more. And so I kind of picked up on that spirit, and some of my clients realized that too. And I've just been fortunate to work with, people who live down the street from me, to, corporations that are based out of Australia, like Aesop, to the folks in Chicago, like Intelligentsia. They've been so trusting and wonderful. But what you realize is that, at least for me, it's about making experiences, but also like listening to them, and it's not about me and what I want to do. It's like, let's make something badass for you, and getting them to sort of take ownership in that idea too. It's sort of like, to quote, the artist Jeff Tweedy, or Bob Dylan, if you don't have a song worth singing, why sing it? So that's kind of what I try to remind myself to do in my projects.
So how many people are you working with right now? It's just you, correct?
Yeah, I just have, it's just me. It's one person. There's about 13 projects right now.
Wow.
All commercial, mainly commercial. I made a rule to not do residential work unless the people were really cool,
Hmm.
or they were individuals. I just thought residential was too much marriage counseling.
And then another, like, really interesting thing is that we talked about is, you're really a bike advocate, and there's a question that popped up there that said we need to ask you how many bikes you own. I love for you to speak on how that you developed this lifestyle that you can still live a normal life, but commute on bikes a little bit.
So if it's a good day, I do about 20 miles.
Nice.
It's about 9 to downtown Austin and 9 back to my house. Um, but architecture is stressful, construction stressful. You never know who you're going to get to build your stuff, or what goes wrong, or how people will react. So riding my bike was a way to kind of not answer the phone, deal with the stress, and then also just deal with trying to stay fit without having to join a gym, but also just kind of enjoy life. I got into bicycles when I was 14, and kind of never looked back. Currently, I'm sad. I don't want to give you the actual number how many bicycles I have. It'd be almost kind of like a hoarder. But the thing I would say to everyone is, use your money well. And I mean that in that you can go buy a bike from Costco, you can go buy a bicycle from, Performance Bike. Oh, they're gone too. But I would say this, like, I use my money and I invest in other artisans as people invest in me. So people around this country and around the world make beautiful things, whether they're jewelry, furniture, buildings, fashion. Um, I love to meet custom bicycle builders, and I know many, and I love what they do. And the thing I love about bicycles is that I love riding them, but then also there's a story behind each one that I've had made or have collected. So to me, it's a little bit of meaning, but also like the idea of giving back and investing in what people do.
Yeah, like I hate like to plug it into my industry, but like when you talk about investing in different art forms, something that has really and you can speak on this yourself, but that has really shown off your work in really great ways. You've done a very good job on picking a photographer that really kind of complements your work, and picking a photographer that really spends the time in getting the job done in the right way to document your work. And for a single for a single person firm to hire a photographer of higher caliber is kind of unheard of out here in California. Have you noticed that hiring a photographer has been beneficial for you to share your work? Or
It is. I mean,
this is off.
You look at the work of like Julius Schulman, and you see what Neutra and all the case study architects and those after him after them did, and you realize that part of it is sort of romantic, like it's part of selling the dream of architecture. But also for me, I try to use it as a record keeping, because oftentimes people don't realize that your clients buy a bunch of junk that you have absolutely no control over. Like my favorite story is like Richard Meyer in the Getty Center in Los Angeles. He had in his contract that the employees who worked at the Getty Center were not allowed to put anything near the windows of his buildings, because if people showed up, it would ruin the purity of his vision. And so there was a famous story where Ezra Stroller's team came out from New York to photograph it, and he climbed up into the Getty Center's administrative offices and had people remove things from like the CEO's office because you could see them. And that's maybe a little too obsessive, but for me, like it's a way to kind of close the story where I've made a building or come up with a vision, it's built, and now it's theirs to take on. And so for me, it's a way to kind of capture that transition.
Beautiful. So kind of as we need to wrap this conversation up, I like to ask you now, how do you see COVID-19 affecting the world of architecture from your standpoint? What do you think will have the biggest changes in the world post COVID-19?
I think the major thing to at least the profession of architecture is, I hope that employers give their staff more flexibility. A lot of architects are inflexible in this idea that you have to be in the studio to do the work and draft and be there for the spontaneity and the craziness that comes from a studio environment. But to be realistic, the studio environment, that happens like 1% of the time. I mean, you can do that over dinner and after dinner one night. So to me, it's like, I hope that the architects out there give their staff more flexibility to work from home and flexible hours, and realize that life is sometimes more important than just meeting the goddamn deadline. And oftentimes deadlines can come and go, and really it's not that critical, at least in the private sector. I can't speak for the public sector, but in the private sector, it's like, do what you can, but life is important. Don't forget to live.
That's a beautiful message. So wrapping it up here, two things. I would like to just to have any closing statements that will make you, that would wrap everything up for us, and then remind everybody how they can get in touch with you and where are the best places to reach out to you besides clicking the little button up there that will direct you to your
Yes.
profile. So any closing remarks, and just remind everybody who you are and where they can find you.
Sure. My name is Scout Magic. That is my legal name. I was born with that name. And you can find me online at scoutmagic.com, or feel free to connect with me via Instagram at Scotty Magic.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Scott. It was
Thanks
great
for having
talking to
me.
you, and I really appreciate you sharing your story today.
Yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Bye. Well, everybody, that was it was magical, just as just as we're saying here. That was a really awesome conversation. It's really great to be reminded that there's so many people that affect us in our lives that bring us to the place that we are now, and that we have to respect all the different forces that bring us there. So I hope that was fun for everybody, like it was fun for me. And tomorrow we'll be talking at 4 p.m. as well. So get ready for that. So thank you very much for everyone for coming in. And remember that things are getting better and life is getting better. So please stay healthy, wash your hands, and just keep positive. Have a great day, everybody.